Welcome back to the O&O Sports YouTube channel. I'm your host, Colton Fetter. And no, this is not the O&O show. This is actually a brand new series. You're seeing it here first. This is going to be our tier list series, starting off with the SEC. We're going to get to every Power 4 conference. So if you're a fan of one of those teams or one of those head coaches, be sure to subscribe, turn those notifications on for when we do the following conferences. This is not just an SEC channel, this is a national channel, so we will get to those. If you haven't heard of a tier list, if you look at the left side of your screen, you will see these tiers, surprisingly. You have elite, best of the best. These are going to be the Nick Sabans of the world. I know he retired, but as an example, Nick Saban, elite head coach. Great, just a step below elite. Haven't done quite as much to be considered elite, but very, very good nonetheless. The good tier is going to be coaches that have had success, but not quite as much as the great or elite tiers. Average, your run-of-the-mill head coach, hasn't done much, hasn't been bad, just been directly in that middle category. Poor either means they were never that great or they've kind of fallen off. They've experienced some kind of success, but not enough to be considered average or good or any of that. And then hot seat, which means they're on the fringe of being fired. They just have not been that good. This tier is going to be filled with coaches who have had enough time to do something and they haven't really done anything, or they've put their schools in a worse position than where they started. And then we have the brand new tier, which is going to be coaches that are surprisingly brand new. This category is going to be for coaches that were coordinators who have just been promoted or haven't coached at the FBS level before. Now, the criteria for each coach is going to be judged based on what they have done to this point. This is not a prediction of what they will do or how good they can be. A lot of these coaches have a lot of potential. They just haven't had it come to fruition yet. I'm not going to judge them and say they're great or good or average just based on the potential they have. It is only what they've done to this point. We're going to go over their record, the awards or championships that they've won, their recruiting stats, and just a general overview of their career, starting with Billy Napier of Florida. Billy Napier is an interesting case. He was a consistent winner at the Group of 5 level at Louisiana, and that hasn't really translated to the Power 5, or I guess Power 4 level yet. You ask a lot of Florida fans if they're fans of Napier, and they're probably going to tell you no. Funnily enough, I think he has a lot of potential, but I can't base him off that, obviously, like I just said. In 2018, he was hired at Louisiana. He spent his career there until 2021. And in 2022, he was hired at Florida, and he's been there up until now. Hasn't really been able to put it together. His overall record is 51-26. A bulk of those wins are at the Group of 5 level at Louisiana. He went 40-12 there and 17-5 in the conference. And at Florida, he's gone 11-14 and 6-10 in the conference. Not really what you want to see. Florida thought that they could upgrade into the championship level by hiring Napier, and I think they can. He just has not done it yet. In bowl games, he's 2-2, so exactly average. Not bad, but also not great. As a head coach, his awards and championships, he's been a 2-time Sun Belt champion in 2020 and 2021, 2-time Sun Belt Coach of the Year in 2019 and 2021. For his recruiting numbers at Louisiana, he averaged the 84th ranked high school class and the 61st ranked transfer class. And at Florida, he's averaged the 12th high school class and the 14th transfer class. So he's been able to put together good recruiting numbers at Florida. It would have been a lot better this year if he would have kept some of the guys that ended up decommitting and committing elsewhere. And that is being counted against him in these stats. But overall, for Billy Napier, we are going to give him the average tier. He's not great, but he hasn't been awful in his head coaching career. He's shown he can be great. Obviously, he hasn't been great at Florida. So he is our first average head coach in the SEC. Next is Oklahoma head coach Brent Venables. Now, Venables is still pretty new, so we'll have to see how his style translates to the SEC. Oklahoma's been in the Big 12 for the past couple years under Brent Venables. Now they make the SEC jump. It'll be very interesting to see how that translates. And if you ask me, Oklahoma's probably going to hold their own. They are a very defense-oriented team, and their offense has been good enough to compete at that level. So Oklahoma definitely won't get left behind like some people think, but that is neither here nor there. In 2022, Brent Venables was hired at Oklahoma, where he has spent his entire head coaching career. His overall record is 16-10 with a 10-8 conference record, and he is 0-2 in bowl games. Now, his only awards or championships was winning the Broyles Award at Clemson as a coordinator. That's not going to factor in too heavily here because this is a head coach tier list. And for recruiting, he averages the 9th ranked high school class in the country and the 10th ranked transfer class. Very good at recruiting, and he's experienced a good amount of success early on in his career, unlike a guy like Napier, who's really struggled in his first couple years. And that is why we are giving him the good tier. Now, our next head coach is a true OG of college football. He is LSU head coach Brian Kelly. He's been everywhere and done almost everything, and I'll get to that in a second. In 2004, he was hired at Central Michigan, stayed there until 2006. 2006, hired at Cincinnati and stayed there until 2009. 2010, he was hired at Notre Dame, where he spent most of his head coaching career up until 2021, and in 2022, he was hired at LSU. Now, his overall record, 186-69, doesn't get better than that for active head coaches. At Central Michigan, he went 19-16, 15-9 in conference. Cincinnati, 33-6, 17-4 in the conference. Notre Dame, 113-41, and they were not in the conference, so they did not have a conference record. And at LSU, in his first couple years, he's gone 20-7 with a 12-4 conference record as he made the jump to the SEC. And he's 9-6 in bowls. Nothing to sneeze at. Very, very good numbers there. For awards, he's a one-time MAC champion in 2006, two-time Big East champion in 2008 and 2009 with Cincinnati, three-time Big East Coach of the Year in 2007 through 2009. He's a one-time ACC Coach of the Year, which is a fun fact that not many people remember. In that 2020 COVID year, Notre Dame combined with the ACC, and he won the Coach of the Year for that year, which is very funny to look back on. And he was a National AP Coach of the Year 2 times in 2012 and 2018. Now, for Kelly's recruiting numbers at Central Michigan, he averaged the 104th ranked high school class. They did not have the transfer portal in a bulk of his beginning years. At Cincinnati, he averaged the 86th high school class. At Notre Dame, he averaged the 12th high school class and the 20th transfer class ranked nationally. And at LSU, his recruiting numbers have been even better. He's had the 7th ranked high school class on average and the 16th ranked transfer class. And all that to say, I feel like this is a very easy elite tier. Oh, there we go. Not great. Elite for Brian Kelly. And he's earned it. He's been great at LSU. The defense wasn't great last year, but if you know who Brian Kelly is, if you know what his beliefs are, he's going to get that defense right. And LSU could be a contender for the SEC next year even. We'll have to wait and see on that. But first, we've got Vanderbilt's Clark Lea. Now, in 2021, Lea was given the almost impossible task of turning around the Vanderbilt Commodores. No one's really been able to do that in a very long time. He was one of the more intriguing coordinator promotions from Notre Dame under Kelly, but that obviously hasn't worked out in his favor. His only head coaching experience is at Vanderbilt, and his record in the 3 years he's been there is 9-27 with a 2-22 conference record. And both of those conference wins came in 2022. They haven't been good in the conference at all. He has not made a bowl game, so his record is 0-0 there, and he has won no awards or championships. His recruiting stats have been okay. He's averaged the 52nd ranked high school class and the 64th ranked transfer class. And in my eyes, this is a pretty easy hot seat. Now, it's not entirely Lee's fault that Vanderbilt has been so bad. He doesn't get a lot of help from the university. And honestly, I sympathize with Lea because, I mean, like I said, he was an intriguing hire. There's a lot of potential there. It's just very, very hard to win at Vanderbilt, who's not really focused on football as much. But with that being said, he is our first hot seat head coach. Now, next up on the tier list, we have Eli Drinkwitz, who is very polarizing. Most SEC fans either love him or hate him, and those that love him are probably from the state of Missouri. Despite that, he turned the haters into believers last year. Missouri put on a very great season, winning double-digit games and beating Ohio State in a bowl game. Before that, there were 3 mediocre seasons, and I believe most publications had Drinkwitz as a hot seat candidate going into last year. And he's really honestly been able to turn Missouri into a credible threat in the SEC for the first time in at least a decade. Now, obviously, that's just one season of work, so we don't know how that'll translate into the 2024 season or beyond. But like I said, this is being based on what they have done. Now, Drinkwitz started his career in 2019 at Appalachian State, where he spent that year and then immediately was hired by Missouri in 2020. His overall record at the FBS level is 40-27. At App State, he went 13-1, 7-1 in conference in that single season he was there. And at Missouri, he's gone 28-21 with a perfectly even 17-17 conference record. Now, those numbers don't necessarily pop off the paper, but that's because, like I said, those first couple of years, Missouri wasn't very good. It took a decent amount of time to rebuild, and now it seems like they're in a better place. But for bowl games, Drinkwitz is 1-2. Not great, but not awful. As for awards, he is the Sun Belt champion in 2019 with Appalachian State. And this past year, he won SEC Coach of the Year for the first time, obviously because of that turnaround he did for Missouri. And for recruiting at App State, he had the 99th ranked high school class and the 42nd ranked transfer class. And at Missouri, he's averaged the 30th ranked high school class with the 25th ranked transfer class. Missouri has separated themselves as a good transfer school. A lot of kids who go to, I'll say, higher end schools that either don't get playing time or don't like the system transfer to Missouri because they are such a stable, solid school. And for that, I'm going to give Eli Drinkwitz a good grade. He is our second good ranked head coach in the SEC, which he's earned. If we had done this a year ago, he probably would have been in the hot seat or poor category. But that just goes to show how good last year was for Missouri. Up next, we have Jeff Lebby. This one's going to be short and sweet. He had great stints at Oklahoma and Ole Miss and UCF as offensive coordinator, and he's finally made the head coach jump at Mississippi State. Now, this pairing is interesting because prior to last year, Mississippi State has had a history of having very good, dynamic offenses, and Lebby's scheme is probably going to be heavily offense-oriented. He's been one of the better offense coordinators in the country over his tenure at those schools. So I believe it is a great pairing for Mississippi State, but obviously he's never been a head coach, so he's getting the brand new category. Up next, we have Tennessee's head coach, Josh Heupel. Now, Heupel's done a great job at unmuddying the waters after years of dissatisfaction under the Dooley, Butch Jones, and Jeremy Pruitt regimes at Tennessee. Although he's still fairly new, it seems he has been able to re-elevate Tennessee back into that nationally relevant category that they used to be in. Now, prior to Tennessee, he was hired at UCF in 2018, following Scott Frost and that national championship winning team, quote unquote. He spent 3 years there and was hired at Tennessee in 2021, where he remains now. His overall record has been 55-20. At UCF, he went 28-8, 19-5 in conference. At Tennessee, 27-12, 14-10 in conference, and in bowl games, he is even at 3 wins and 3 losses. Like I said, Tennessee has been able to resurge back into relevancy, whereas it seemed like in the past they were kind of falling off, didn't know exactly how they would rebound, made a couple bad coaching hires, looked to be trending downwards for the Volunteers, but they ended up getting Heupel, and it has worked out tremendously for them. Now for awards, he's a one-time AAC champion in the year 2018, and he is a one-time SEC Coach of the Year in 2022. Now for recruiting, at UCF, he averaged the 65th ranked high school class and the 37th ranked transfer class in his time there. And at Tennessee, he's averaged the 17th ranked high school class and the 35th ranked transfer class. I honestly expected that to be better. Tennessee's been putting together some good high school recruiting classes, so it was a little shocking to see that they were outside the top 15, but that is still good nonetheless. So Josh Heupel is getting the good tier. He is our third good head coach. Next up, we have the wonderkind himself, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. Now, as most of you probably already know, he's experienced a lot of success relatively early on in his FBS head coaching career. He was the runner-up for the national championship last year at Washington. He brought them back to a spot that they haven't been in this century. And now he's faced with the task of replacing Nick Saban and keeping Alabama afloat in the national title picture. We'll have to wait and see how that goes. He started his head coaching career at Fresno State in 2020. He spent 2 years there and then was hired at Washington. Spent 2 years there, made them a national title contender, and now he's at Alabama. His overall record is 37-9 at Fresno State. He went 13-6, 9-5 in the conference, and then he was hired at Washington, where he went 25-3. Only had 3 losses in 2 years, and they went 17-2 in the conference, and he is 2-1 in bowl games. For awards, he is a 1-time Pac-12 champion last year, a 2-time Pac-12 Coach of the Year last year and the year before, and he was the AP Coach of the Year in 2023. But with the abrupt retirement of college football's boogeyman, Nick Saban, Alabama picked him out. He's their guy, and we'll have to see how that goes. But for recruiting, at Fresno, he averaged the 90th ranked high school class and the 72nd ranked transfer class. And at Washington, he averaged the 39th ranked high school class and the 26th ranked transfer class. Obviously, not great numbers. You can make an argument that there's a lot less resources for a team like either Fresno State or Washington. And it makes what he did at Washington all that impressive, knowing that he didn't have the star talent of a Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. And this may be controversial, but I believe any coach that can make a national championship should be considered elite. So that is where we are putting Kalen DeBoer. Now, our next head coach, I feel like I don't even need to say anything for. It's Kirby Smart. The name speaks for itself. He's solidified himself as college football's top dog, especially now that Nick Saban is gone. But even before that, he's been a back-to-back 2-time national championship winner at Georgia. He's turned Georgia into a perennial national championship favorite. And I don't think you've lost all that much money if you have bet on Georgia to win national championships. He was hired at Georgia in 2016, and he's been there his whole head coaching career. He has an overall record of 94-16, a 56-10 conference record, which is just insanely hard to believe. And he has a 9-2 bowl record, just completely dominant. For awards, 2-time national champion, like I said, in 2021 and 2022. 2-time SEC champ in 2017 and 2022. And a 3-time SEC Coach of the Year. For recruiting, Georgia has averaged the 2nd ranked high school class with the 46th ranked transfer class in his time there. I mean, what more do I need to say? He almost deserves a tier of his own, but for the sake of continuity, he's getting the elite stamp. Now, next on the list of coaches is another polarizing figure. It's Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. Now, Kiffin has solidified himself as not only one of the better SEC coaches, but one of the best sources of entertainment as well. If you follow him on Twitter, it's just a blast. Now, sadly, I'm not factoring entertainment value in this tier list, but if I would easily have him at the elite category. He started his career in 2009 at Tennessee. He spent 1 year there and immediately jumped over to USC, very controversially if you watched college football or were around college football at the time. He was at USC from 2010 to 2013, and then he took a few years off, went to the NFL, went back to Alabama as a coordinator, and ended up at Florida Atlantic in 2017. He was there until 2019, and then he was hired by Ole Miss in 2020. His overall record is 96-49. At Tennessee, he went 7-6, 4-4 in the conference in that 1 year. USC 28-15, 23-13 in the conference. FAU 27-13 and 18-6 in the conference. And now at Ole Miss has gone 34-15 with a 20-13 conference record. And he's also perfectly even in bowl games, 4 wins to 4 losses. Now for awards and championships, he's a 2-time Conference USA champion in 2017 and 2019. He was, of course, at FAU in those years. Now for recruiting, he had the 8th ranked high school class in the country at Tennessee the 1 year he was there. At FAU, he averaged the 66th ranked high school class with the 35th transfer class. And at Ole Miss, he's averaged the 20th ranked high school class with the 14th ranked transfer class. Now, the past couple years at Ole Miss, he's really solidified himself as a transfer portal hawk. He's gotten a lot of great additions through the portal. And overall, he's really just rejuvenated his career at Ole Miss. He's proven to be one of the best coaches, one of the most consistent coaches in the SEC, year in and year out. And for that, Lane Kiffin is our first great tier head coach. Next up on the list, we have Kentucky head coach Mark Stoops. Stoops has gone criminally underrated in his time at Kentucky. He's taken them out of the depths of college football purgatory. He's built them into a consistent winner. All of that despite having probably half the resources as most of its SEC counterparts. And I think now it's time to give credit where credit is due. He's spent his entire head coaching career at Kentucky. He's had an overall record of 73-65. He's gone 35-55 in the conference, and he's gone even in bowl games 4-4. He was the SEC Coach of the Year in 2018. I believe Kentucky won 10 or 11 games in that year, which if you understand how much of a tall task that is, you understand why he won Coach of the Year that year. And for recruiting, he's done pretty good. 29th ranked high school class, 26th ranked transfer class on average, which is very good for Kentucky standards. And with that said, Mark Stoops is going to be in the good tier. I feel like he's just a little bit off that great tier. He hasn't been able to win 8, 9, 10 games consistently for Kentucky, but he has kept them in that mix. So for that, he is in the good tier. Up next, we have Sam Pittman at Arkansas. And Pittman has been kind of confusing in his years at Arkansas. Now, about 3 years ago, everybody thought that Pittman had Arkansas back in a nationally prominent position. Now, within the past year or two, that conversation has been completely flipped on its head. And now a lot of Arkansas fans and a lot of just general college football fans think Sam Pittman deserves to be fired with how bad he's been, especially last year. He was hired in 2020, and he spent his entire head coaching career at Arkansas. He's gone 23-25 with an 11-23 conference record, but in that mix, he's gone 2-0 in bowl games. He has no awards or championships, and for recruiting, he's averaged the 27th ranked high school class and the 22nd ranked transfer class. Now, a lot of Arkansas fans probably expect me to put him in the hot seat category, and he may very well be on the hot seat category, but objectively, I don't think he's been that bad. He did have a pretty good year in 2021 at Arkansas, so he's going to be a step above the hot seat. He's going to be just in the poor category. Obviously, he has not been great, but he has not been abysmal either. Now, our second to last head coach is University of South Carolina head coach Shane Beamer. Now, like Pittman, he is kind of a hard read. He's had his fair share of ups and downs at South Carolina. And while it looks like he might be able to get South Carolina back in that realm of Lou Holtz or Steve Spurrier, he hasn't really done it. South Carolina had a pretty good 2022. They've shown flashes of being a potentially dangerous team in the SEC. That has, of course, not come completely into fruition. Last year, they were not that good. But in 2021, Shane Beamer was hired there. He's gone 20-18 overall with a 10-14 conference record. Once again, no awards or championships. And he's averaged the 29th ranked high school class with the 15th ranked transfer class. Now, South Carolina has rarely been a contender in the SEC. At their height, they were very good in the SEC, but never really great or elite. So it's going to be an uphill battle for Beamer getting back to that, as it's hard for South Carolina to recruit in the Georgia, Clemson, North Carolina, Florida vicinity. But I believe that is possible. Shane Beamer seems like a good fit there. Obviously, I'm not taking potential into account, so Shane Beamer is going to get an average ranking. And that brings us to our last head coach. It's going to be Texas's? That sounds wrong. It's going to be Steve Sarkisian. Sark's style has really come to a T at Texas, pun intended. And it's really cool to see, seeing that his career kind of fizzled out at Washington and USC. And it was kind of questioned for Texas fans and fans across the country in 2021 when he was hired. Didn't have a great track record, but the risk has paid off for them. And it's probably safe to say that he's brought Texas back. And this is the part where every Texas fan knocks on wood for me, because I'm not going to do it for you. He was hired at Washington in 2009, and he was there until 2013. He was then hired at USC in 2014, spent 2 years there, and was hired in 2021 as the Texas head coach. Overall, he's gone 71-49 in his career, 34-29 at Washington with a 24-21 conference record. He went 12-6 in his, 1.5 years at USC, where he went 7-5 in conference. And at Texas, he's gone 25-14 with an 18-10 conference record. Now, we have to keep in mind, Texas has been in the Big 12. They are jumping to the SEC. It's going to be difficult to adjust if I had to assume. They have all the talent in the world to be a good SEC team, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. For awards and championships, he was the Big 12 Coach of the Year last year and the Big 12 Champion last year. And for recruiting, he averaged the 31st ranked high school class at Washington, the 6th ranked high school class at USC, and the 7th ranked high school class at Texas with the 23rd ranked transfer class. And for that, we're going to give Sark the great tier. I could see the argument for him being elite as he did have Texas in the playoff. I still think Texas had a lot of holes last year. Sark has them in a good place to continue being in that picture, but I'd say for the time being, I wouldn't consider him elite. Now that, of course, is not a knock on him at all. He's still great, and Texas should be a really fun team to watch this upcoming season. And that is going to do it, folks. As a recap, we have Brian Kelly, Kalen DeBoer, and Kirby Smart as the elite SEC head coaches. Lane Kiffin and Steve Sarkisian as great SEC head coaches. Brent Venables, Eli Drinkwitz, Josh Heupel, and Mark Stoops as good SEC head coaches. Billy Napier and Shane Beamer are our average SEC head coaches. Sam Pittman is our only poor SEC head coach, and Clark Lee is our only hot seat SEC head coach. And Jeff Lebby's hanging out down here. Going to be fun to see what he does at Mississippi State. Now, if you enjoyed the episode and are looking forward to seeing more tier lists, be sure to like the video and subscribe, turn post notifications on, do all that great stuff so that you are here, you are up to date, you know when the next tier list is coming out. And be sure to check out the O&O show next week. There is going to be a lot in store for that episode of the podcast. And that's going to wrap up our first episode of college football head coach tier lists. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next